Thank you and good morning. I have to start by saying what an amazing conference this has been. I have learned things that I could have never imagined. I have to tell you honestly, I never knew I could be a ballet dancer before I was here. And, yesterday we learned about the expanding universe, we learned about eating better and veganism, and I have to tell you, last night when I went to dinner, I made sure that 50% of my plate was covered in vegetables before I got there. So I feel very virtuous this morning. So we learned amazing things, and to me, one of the most exciting presentations was about the economy. And I learned that the economy was a whole lot better than I ever knew. But what I also learned is that if I want to go out and have a good time, I probably should not go to a bar with an accountant, an attorney, or an actuary. But on a more serious note, one of the things we also learned yesterday is that we face an enormous number of problems. Probably the gridlock in Washington isn't going to get better anytime soon. The cliff of what happens when we have to cut spending, when the taxes have to go up, is a really serious problem. And I have to tell you, the Iranian nuclear problem was a really serious problem. But despite all of that, I was able to go to my room last night, and I have to tell you, I was able to sleep like a baby. I slept for a couple of hours, I got up and cried, I slept for a couple of hours, I got up and cried. But here I am, and what I'm going to talk to you about this morning is those problems. And we face ever more difficult problems as a society, as a country, as a world. But what I want to talk to you about today is a really hopeful presentation about new ways of solving problems. What's really been amazing to me, and I've spent my whole life in innovation, is how people are now applying the techniques of social media to problem solving. So let me start by asking you a quick question, because we know about social media. How many people in the room use Twitter? Okay, a bunch. But how many use Facebook? Lots more. So you understand social media. It lets you find friends, it lets you connect with people, it lets you find people with similar interests, so it's all very great. And what's really been going on over the past couple of years is people have been applying the knowledge and techniques of social media to solving a wide range of problems. And so what I'd like to do this morning is talk to you about some of those problems and show you how they've been solved. So let me start. And for those of you who are local to the area, you'll probably recognize this. This is Union Square in downtown San Francisco. But what I want to draw your attention to is sort of right there in the middle above me is a red balloon. Now that balloon is about 8 feet in diameter. It's a helium weather balloon. And it was part of something called the DARPA Network Challenge. DARPA stands for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and these are the people who fund the most esoteric research almost in the world. They funded the original creation of the internet and a whole variety of other things. And they were very interested in trying to understand the power of social media. And they came up with a very interesting challenge, and here's what it was. They would go out and hide in plain sight 10 balloons like this in the continental United States. 10-foot weather balloons, somewhere in the United States, in 10 different places. Now, to make things a little easier, they said they'll all be in plain view of a road that you can get a car to. So nobody put it in the back of Yosemite in the backcountry, so you can drive. But if you think about it, there are a whole lot of roads, and this is a really big country, and here's what the challenge was. They said, how long will it take for an individual, a group of individuals, or teams to correctly find the 10 hidden balloons? Now, if you think about it, this is sort of the ultimate needle in a haystack problem. 10 balloons somewhere in the continental United States. Now, if you think about it also, you can see why there might be, the Defense Department might be interested in this. This is sort of an interesting problem. And before opening this up to the public, they went to the Pentagon and they said to them, hey, here's the problem, we're going to hide these 10 balloons somewhere in the United States, how would you go find them in a reasonable amount of time? And the generals thought about it, and they had their colonels and admirals think about it, the answer came back and said, we don't know how to do this. This is sort of an intractable problem. Because even though they have satellites up in the sky that could see a weather balloon, the problem with the satellites is they only can see a small amount of the square footage at a time, so sweeping the whole country would take too long. So what DARPA did is they put this out to the public. And they said, we will offer a $40,000 prize to an individual or team or whoever can correctly identify the location of the 10 balloons. Now think for a second in your own mind how you might go about doing that, and think about how long that might take, how many days or weeks or even months. Because after all, this is a pretty big country. And there was a lot of debate about how long they should run this for, what happens after 6 months, balloons get old, they get weathered. But they put the challenge in. What happened amazed everybody. Here were the location of the 10 balloons, all in relatively clear places, lots of them in public parks like Union Square. These 10 locations were identified in 8 hours and 52 minutes. Which, if you think about it, is really sort of an amazing, amazing thing. Right, they're just anywhere. The key was how they did it. And it was a team at MIT, smart group of people. And what they did is they used the power of social media. Here's how they did it. They set up a website and said, we want your help in finding the balloons. If you find a balloon, we'll pay you $2,000. Okay, fair enough. But they added to it a network sort of marketing scheme, sort of like Amway, and it says if you recruit people to look, if one of them finds a balloon, they'll get $2,000 and you'll get $1,000. Now, if someone they recruit finds a balloon, they'll get, the person who finds it get $2,000, the person who recruited them get $1,000, you'll still get $500, and on and on and on it goes. So that everybody involved would get some of the money. And literally, quickly over 5,000 people were recruited to participate in this, and this extraordinarily astonishing result. In less than 9 hours, 10 needles in the haystack were found in the continent of the United States. Fascinating. But let me move to another example, far more technical in nature. How many people in the room use Netflix? Okay, so you know what Netflix is. But they started, today mostly we stream, but they started by renting DVDs. Okay? And since you're subscribers, one of the things you might know is they had a recommended list. So when you went to the Netflix website and said, hey, I'm looking for something to watch, it would say, hey, here's some movies you'd be interested in. And the way they calculated which movies you might be interested in is they looked at all the movies you had looked at in the past, and they did some statistical analysis of what other people had done, and tried to predict, based on what other people have rented, what they like, what you might like. Much like Peter talked about yesterday in the Google Big Data Analytics and how you use data in this way. So it was a very interesting problem, and the reason they cared about this is they found a very interesting thing. It turns out if you rent a DVD that you don't like, you actually don't put it back in the envelope and send it back. What you do is you watch 10 minutes of it, you say, this sucks, you put it on the kitchen table, and you let it sit there and think about maybe next week I'll try to watch it again. And people would end up keeping bad DVDs for a long amount of time, and this cost Netflix a lot of money. And they, of course, have really smart scientists trying to come up with the algorithm, so improving it so the recommendations would be better was really important. So what they did is they ran what they called the Netflix challenge. And here was the challenge. If you can improve the quality of our ratings by 10%, you could win $1 million. Pretty cool. What was really interesting about it, however, is after they announced that 20,000 teams from over 150 countries said, we're going to go try to get $1 million. Now, what's interesting about this, and why this is such an interesting, is no one knew who these people were. Netflix hired some of the best people. This was an important problem. And yet there were literally tens of thousands of people they didn't even know about who wanted to work on that problem. And sure enough, the prize was won, but there was an interesting thing that happened. They had a little gimmick at the end. And the gimmick was, once someone hit 10%, they'd have 30 days for a best and final. And whoever in the 30 days of the teams could get the best in that 30 days would win $1 million. The two teams that were at the top of the rankings called each other and said, why don't we combine our techniques so that we would win? And a team from the US combined with the team from Australia, that's how you get this crazy name, Belkers, from out of chaos, and they won $1 million. Once again, using the power of social media to bring people together to solve a problem. Now, I recently retired as the Chief Innovation Officer at PricewaterhouseCoopers, so let me give you another example. And that is, at PwC, we decided to do a similar sort of challenge. And that was, what's the next $100 million business opportunity for PwC? We opened it up to everybody in the US who worked for us, about 35,000 people. We said, if you have an idea, put a team together up, 2 to 9 people, submit a form, and it'll go up on a website, and people can vote, and people can comment on it. And it was done like American Idol. It was a series of elimination rounds, where finally we'd announce a winner, and the winning team would win $100,000. Now, $100 million business ideas, even as an entrepreneur, those are few and far between. Those are pretty hard things. And in most businesses, that sort of question of who comes up with the next $100 million idea is 2 or 3 people. Instead, we opened it up to everybody and said, hey, if you have ideas, get together, form a team. And this is sort of what the website looked like. We expected, we actually spent a lot of time worrying about what if we only got 5 or 10 ideas. We had hoped for 100. 200 was sort of our greatest dream. That would be a home run. What happened when the round 1 ended was an amazing thing. We had 779 submissions from almost 2,000 people from around our firm. And what was amazing about this is when we did an analysis of who made up the people who made up the teams, they were sort of everybody. It represented the demographics of our firm from a staff class point of view, young people, old people, immature people, mature people, high-level people, low-level people. One of the teams was a group of 5 young women, as a matter of fact, with less than 2 years of experience in our Philadelphia office who made it all the way to the finals and came in 3rd. Who would have known? And this is really the power of social problem solving. We face incredibly difficult problems. You've heard about them here, you know them, we read them in the paper every day. But traditionally, the way you think about problem solving is by bringing a group of experts together. We heard a lot about creativity, and you put them in a room and they brainstorm, and that's the way you come up with solutions. But the problem with that approach is you have to know the people to invite. And there might be literally thousands of other people around the world who may have knowledge and expertise that can help solve your problem. One of the interesting things you heard yesterday was the tremendous presentation on creativity. And one of the things she said in her presentation is one of the ways you think about and become innovative is you approach the problem in a different point of view. You try to have a different frame, as she said. Well, that's really hard if you're an expert because you spent your whole life. But if you're not an expert, but you have an interest, you automatically have a different point of view. And that's why this sort of social problem solving seems to work. It allows us in an amazing way to start to harness the creativity that's in all of us, everywhere. We no longer have to know who we think the experts are. That there may be experts amongst all of you, but you've never had the opportunity to apply your knowledge and your particular view. One of you or a team of you or you and someone working from Russia or Australia or somewhere else could get together using these social media tools to work on solving a problem in a new way. What we have found is that people have been using this approach over and over again. I gave you a couple of examples of how we've used it. In one needle in the haystack, where the only skill you needed was the ability to go look. A highly technical one, where you needed very specific technical skills to be able to do this analysis. And yet, tens of thousands of people came out of the woodwork and did better than the experts that Netflix tried to hire. Or at PwC, thousands of people had ideas for $100 million businesses that we never even imagined. No one would have known those people. I read some of the business plans myself. I called my wife and I said, I want to invest in these. These are really great ideas. Where did they come from? So as we think about the problems we face, I think that social problem solving offers us a new opportunity and a new hope for solving them. It represents a fundamental shift in how we think about solving problems from only experts to the inherent creativity in all of us. Thank you so much.